Imagine a sweet, soft-spoken nurse, beloved by her small town, who turns into a cold-blooded killer. This is the chilling story of Vicki Dawn Jackson. Vicki was a dedicated nurse at Nakona General Hospital, known for her kindness and professionalism. She had been caring for the town's residents since she was a teenager. She owned 25 nurses' uniforms, always kept pressed and ready. Her appearance was immaculate, with neatly brushed hair and a dab of Charlie perfume. Every evening, she would visit the local Dairy Queen, dressed in her uniform, greeting everyone with a polite hi, y'all. Vicki would order her usual taco basket and eat alone, always cleaning up after herself before heading to her night shift at the hospital. Nakona General was a small hospital with rarely more than 15 patients. Vicki made it a point to visit all of them, introducing herself as Nurse Vicki. She was seen as a caring and dedicated professional, always willing to help and never complaining about her duties. But on December 11, 2000, Vicki made a sinister change in her routine. She filled a syringe with methacurium chloride, a drug that paralyzes the respiratory system. She began walking the hospital's hallway, looking for a patient to murder. This was the beginning of a horrifying spree. From December 11, 2000, to February 18, 2001, Vicki murdered 10 patients and attempted to kill 5 more. She was not a mercy killer, she wanted people dead. What was even more shocking was that many of her victims were people she had known for years, including neighbors and friends' parents. One night, she even injected methacurium chloride into her own husband's grandfather and attended his funeral, offering condolences to the family. The town of Nakona was in disbelief. How could such a meek, mild-mannered nurse turn into a serial killer? Vicki's trial was delayed multiple times, but when it finally began, she pleaded no contest to the charges, avoiding a jury trial. She was sentenced to life in prison, but the mystery of her motive remained unresolved. Vicki agreed to an interview, insisting she was not guilty despite her plea. She wanted people to understand her side of the story. Nakona, a small town with a population of 3,200, was left grappling with the horror of Vicki's actions. The town's residents were at a loss for explanations. Vicki had moved to Nakona from Indiana as a teenager. She had always dreamed of becoming a nurse, inspired by Florence Nightingale. She started working at the Nakona nursing home as a nurse's aide, showing kindness and dedication to the patients. Despite her modest and unassuming nature, Vicki's life was filled with personal struggles, including failed marriages and financial difficulties. Her third marriage to Kirk Jackson seemed promising, but it quickly deteriorated, adding to her emotional turmoil. Vicki sought help from a counselor, revealing her deep depression and feelings of rejection. She even mentioned mood swings and irritability. Her daughter, Jennifer, noticed a change in her mother, sensing something was crumbling inside her. On December 11, 2000, Vicki's first victim was a 100-year-old widow named Donnie Jennings. Vicki injected her with methacurium chloride, leading to her suffocation. The deaths continued, with Vicki targeting patients who had been rude or dismissive towards her. She seemed to take pleasure in her acts of vengeance. Despite the increasing number of deaths, the hospital staff did not suspect Vicki. She was seen as a gentle and caring nurse. But on January 30, 2001, Vicki's actions became too blatant to ignore. She injected a 14-year-old girl, Lydia Weatherred, who was quickly revived by doctors. The hospital administration finally took action, but it was too late for many of Vicki's victims. Vicki was fired, and the investigation began. The town was in shock, struggling to comprehend the extent of her crimes. Vicki continued to maintain her innocence, even after her arrest. She insisted she was a loving nurse who would never hurt anyone. In her final interview, Vicki expressed regret for the families who had lost loved ones but never admitted to the murders. This is the story of Nurse Vicki, a woman who went from being a beloved caregiver to a notorious serial killer. Remember, not all monsters hide in the dark. They can be right in front of us.